All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is day 6, 40 days of 4VKM, and I promised the long-lost episode, and I found it, and we delivered it on Rumble yesterday, 2 days ago, and from when this gets released, but you can go check it out. It is Vincent Kennedy McMahon versus Trump, the lost episode. You can find it on Rumble. Check it out. A lot of you guys haven't seen it, I'm sure. The diehards probably have, but a lot of people have not, so highly recommend it because there's a lot of good nuggets in it. Now, the audio is not the best in this video. This is one of the early videos that I made, so really before I knew what I was doing from a video production standpoint, and I was trying to disguise a lot of stuff because we had a lot of copyrighted material in there, so trying to, cover it up and whatnot. So we're going to get right into it. So this is kind of like the definitive episode that kind of really showcases Donald Trump's involvement with the WWE. So you get to the start, which is the Hall of Fame package that WWE put together, where you have different people like Michael Cole, Vince McMahon, all talking about Donald Trump's love and involvement for WWE. Now, the story begins in the 80s. Trump's probably, peaking at this time in popularity and success. He's synonymous with success, as they say, and he's the owner of Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. So he wants to bring in WrestleMania, brings it in for WrestleMania 4, where they have a big tournament to crown a new WWE champion, which was ultimately run by the Macho Man, Randy Savage, getting his first title win. So you had Randy Savage win at WrestleMania 4. You see in the video that it created such an economic boom that Trump said, let me get it again, and brings it back, Trump Plaza, for WrestleMania 5. And that's where the mega powers collided, Hulk Hogan versus the Macho Man, Randy Savage. So that's kind of where it begins. Trump was very proud of his acquisition, if you will. I think they even call it in the video the merger between WWE and Trump at the time. And that's kind of really where the whole thing begins with Trump in WWE. The 80s at Trump Plaza, 4 and 5. Now, you go forward a couple years. Trump goes back, WrestleMania 7. A couple interesting things about this WrestleMania 7. You'll see it in one of the future Crown Jewel videos. But WrestleMania 7 was basically the lead up to the Gulf War, right? Or the whole WrestleMania season from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania was the span of the Gulf War just about. So right before the Royal Rumble, which remember is in January, you had the Iraq War kind of kick off, the first one in 1991, I would say this is. So, and at the time, you have Sergeant Slaughter, who was America's favorite G.I. Joe, but he became a turncoat and an Iraqi sympathizer and starts criticizing our government for going after Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So Iraq invades Kuwait. You have all these clips of Slaughter being like, Sergeant Saddam Hussein's never going to surrender. He's never going to back down, right? And kind of like how I was telling you the theme before, these geopolitical events pop up and the timing's always horrible, coincidentally, for the WWE. We talked about Russia with the Putin angle and the flight and the Russian character, Lana and Rusev. We talked about the Saudis. They're about to go to Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel or one of the pay-per-views, and the whole Khashoggi thing happens, right? And then they get this pressure. Can't do it. You can't do it, Vince. Don't do it. So what ends up happening? Vince always just plugs ahead and does it, right? So he puts the title. So this happens the week before Ultimate Warrior's going against Sergeant Slaughter, and the Iraq War breaks out, becomes a real war. And again, everybody's like, you can't have Sergeant Slaughter be doing this character. Please, Vince, stop. Don't do it, right? And Vince says, screw that. No, we're going to take advantage of this. We're going to put the belt on Sergeant Slaughter. And it's going to be Sergeant Slaughter versus the real American Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 7 in Los Angeles. So they do WrestleMania 7. It's in LA, so there's a lot of celebrities in the crowd. Mean Gene Okerlund, he interviews Donald Trump, who's at ringside. who ends up being in the front row for the main event. You can see him, boom, front row. Trump's hanging out in the stands with some pretty badass people of the time. You have Henry Winkler, the Fonz, right? We all know how he turned out, but he was a man's man back in the day, right? You also had Chuck Norris. Everybody loves Chuck Norris, right? Walker, Texas Ranger. He comes in, he shakes Trump's hand. Very excited to be there. You had Lou Ferrigno, the Mr. Universe, I believe it was, but also known for the Incredible Hulk, right? So he's there. They're all kind of hanging out together, and then you have Trump kind of in the center of all of them. You know, be like, this is my guys I hang out with, right? So Macaulay Culkin is also featured in this WrestleMania, and as we go forward, you know, you also had the Donald Trump, Macaulay Culkin Home Alone skit. You had Macaulay Culkin likes to talk a lot about the White Rabbit and bunny ears and stuff like that. Look into that. So you have all these different weird little connections happening. Another funny thing about that WrestleMania is that the guest ring announcer or the guest timekeeper, one of them, was actually Trump's future wife, Marla Maples. So, you know, Trump's there with Ivana in the front row, but it's interesting. His future wife comes out and is part of the show. So I guess he enjoyed the show a lot. So you have all this stuff going on. You have Hulk Hogan ultimately winning at WrestleMania 7, defeating Sergeant Slaughter, which coincided with, America claiming victory over Iraq almost like simultaneously, right? This happened a little bit after it, but basically the whole storyline of Sergeant Slaughter being an Iraqi sympathizer ran through the entire Gulf War. And it culminated, like I said, with the real American winning and Donald Trump watching from ringside. So very, very interesting stuff. So Trump's not done with WrestleMania, but it's going to be a little while till we see him back there. We see him, what would it be? 13 years later, we see him at WrestleMania 20, Madison Square Garden, right? 2004. And I mentioned about this in one of the earlier episodes. He gets interviewed by Jesse the Body Ventura, who introduces him as the host of WrestleMania 4 and 5. So Trump comes ringside. Ventura asks him, hey, you know, you're always at WWE. What do you love about it? And Trump says he loves Vince, the great Vince McMahon. He does such a great job. He's a good friend of his, right? And he just loves Vince, right? While Trump's doing this interview, it's funny, coincidentally, you have a guy walk by behind him with a sign that says Jorge. And it just says Jorge on it, and it's very prominent. It walks right behind Trump. It says Jorge, or English translation, George, right? So makes you kind of think about George magazine a little bit, which Trump was on the cover of just a couple years before in the year, I believe it was 2000. So you got George, you got Trump, you got Ventura, all kind of there talking WrestleMania. And you have Jesse, who's in his political career at the time. He asked Trump if he would support him financially if he decided to run for president of the United States. And Donald Trump says, absolutely, Jesse, I will support you 1,000%. He might have said 100%, but I think he said 1,000%. So he said, Ventura wraps it up by saying, I think it's time we have a wrestler in the White House in 2008. And then the crowd goes crazy, right? They want a wrestler in the White House. Now, we didn't get Jesse Ventura, but we did get our WWE Hall of Famer in the White House a couple years later, and that man was Donald J. Trump. So we have that, right? We talked about WrestleMania 23, but before we get to WrestleMania 23, where the Battle of the Billionaires takes place, how is that set up, right? So if you look at the similarities between Vince McMahon and Donald Trump, one of the big things, besides they're both a billionaire, is that they both like to say, you're fired, right? That's how Vince says it. Trump says, you're fired, right? So they both say it. Vince was saying it first. Vince said it first, I think, in 1998 to Stone Cold Steve Austin when he said, screw you, Stone Cold, you're fired. Right? And that's, I believe, the first time Vince said it in character. And then Trump obviously stole it from him and used it on The Apprentice for many, many years. So Vince McMahon, he's got his friend Donald Trump, right? And at the time, and I want to say this is 2007, Donald Trump is feuding with Rosie O'Donnell, right? So Rosie O'Donnell talking a lot of crap about Donald. Donald, throwing it back, calling her fat and a pig and all this stuff that we were reminded of later on by Megyn Kelly, which we get a nice little clip of that in there too. But Vince wants to take advantage of this whole situation. So what's he do? He books Donald Trump versus Rosie O'Donnell at Monday Night Raw, right? And it's not the actual Rosie or Donald. It is they're impersonators of both, right? Donald ends up winning. He hits her with a cake, and maybe this is my confirmation bias, but go watch the video of him holding the cake. It actually looks like a cue, the cake. But again, maybe it was just spilling over or something. If you look at it quick, though, it kind of looks like a cue. Face plants Rosie O'Donnell with the cake and then hits the diving hair butt, because he's got his hair, right, off the top rope to get the 1, 2, 3. So Trump beats Rosie in WWE. But the Donald didn't really like this because he didn't think that his impersonator was that great, right? And so this brings out Donald Trump to the WWE. He does some stints where he drops money from the ceiling into the crowd, which people went bonkers for, right? They went absolutely crazy for it, right? Because it was real money they had dropped from the ceiling. So, he's a man of the people, that Donald Trump. So he's paying off the fans, if you wanted to say it that way. But everybody loved it at the end of the day, and Donald was the good guy in all of this, right? So they end up having a match at WrestleMania 23. A lot of people tell me that number is associated with pain, right? So we'll call it WrestleMania Pain if you want. It's held at Ford Field in Detroit, which they actually just went back to last year for SummerSlam. Year before? Wow, last 2 years they went back to Ford Field. And it was the first time since this WrestleMania. It was 17 years later, I think. So you have Trump and McMahon fighting off at WrestleMania. They each pick a wrestler to represent them. Trump picks his partner is the Ezra Cohen Watnick, the ECW champion, Bobby Lashley. Now think about this. Bobby. Trump's partner is Bobby. Remember that thought. Hold on to that, right? His opponent is Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Kennedy, right? You got like a Bobby Kennedy in the mix here, right? But it gets a little weirder. Who is Vince McMahon's wrestler that he picks to represent him in this match with Bobby Lashley, who, by the way, was a former U.S. Army lieutenant, I believe. So Bobby Lashley, military. They now call him the Almighty Bobby Lashley. He's back in the WWE now. He came back while Trump was president, and after a very long time away from WWE. And then you have Vince McMahon. He picks a wrestler. He picks the cousin of The Rock. And this gentleman's name is called Umaga. Umaga. Spelled exactly that way. U-M-A-G-A. You make America great again. You, Donald Trump, make America great again, right? It's in the name of the wrestler. This is 2007. You're talking about 7, 8 years before you hear Donald Trump say MAGA or make America great again. You have Vince McMahon saying, you MAGA, in front of Donald Trump. So they get their match at WrestleMania, Umaga versus Bobby, right? And it's weird because you have Trump partnered with Bobby, but you also have him against Kennedy, but Kennedy is with Umaga. So it's very, very weird, very interesting. Who knows what it means? So you have all that going on. Stone Cold Steve Austin is the special guest referee, and it's a hair versus hair match. So whoever loses, whichever wrestler loses, they're going to have to get their head shaved by the other person, right? So this becomes a big deal in Hollywood, and entertainment world, right? Everybody keeps asking, oh, who's gonna win? Who's gonna get their head shaved, right? And one of the celebrities they actually ask is James Woods. James Woods is asked. He's in the video. They say, who do you think is going to win? And he actually says he wants Donald's head shaved. So I don't know if Trump ever forgot that. Maybe that's why he got pushed to have to play Joe Biden. Just kidding. He's not playing Joe Biden. But, so James Wood is there, and he says Trump's going to get his head shaved. Most of the celebrities wanted to see Trump get his head shaved. But it didn't happen, because if you remember the famous CNN meme of when, President Trump takes down the CNN logo and from WrestleMania starts pounding him, CNN. Remember, they doxed the meme creator of that. So you have Donald Trump ends up winning with a spear. Bobby Lashley spears Umaga after an assist from Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is the special guest referee. Stone Cold equals 107 in Gematria. A little fun fact. Almighty equals 107 in Gematria as well. So you got all of this stuff going on. Trump shaves Vince McMahon's head bald. The next night on Raw, Vince has to come out, and what is he doing? He's wearing a fedora hat, or a Kavanaugh hat, as they like to call it, which was kind of a hallmark to JFK. He used to wear a lot of Kavanaugh hats. And also our other favorite, Vincent Fusca likes to wear the little Kavanaugh hat as well. So you have Vince come out, and he's got a little bit of a black eye thanks to Donald Trump taking him down and knocking him out. And, they have some fun with it, and it starts a big feud with Vince and Bobby for that ECW championship, which Vince McMahon ultimately won. He became the ECW champion in 2007. Which was very, very fun. One of my personal favorite versions of Vince. So where are we at now? So we did WrestleMania 23. Is there any other time Trump comes back? There is. It is 2009. So still a couple years before he runs for president. And the storyline is Vince McMahon is selling Monday Night Raw. He's selling Monday Night Raw, and he's going to announce who that person is that he's selling it to. He sells it to Donald J. Trump. And Donald J. Trump comes up on the screen, and he starts talking about how Vince never showed appreciation to the Monday Night Raw fans, and how for the first time in its 17-year history, Donald Trump was finally going to show appreciation to the Monday Night Raw fans. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump bought Monday Night Raw in the 17th year of its existence. And it's not just me pulling a stat out and saying, oh, it was the 17th year. He says it multiple times on the program. He says, for the first time in its 17-year history, Raw is going to be commercial free. And he made it commercial free for that episode, right? I believe he also refunded fans their ticket prices, which was unheard of, right? So he's doing all this stuff for the people. People are loving it because he's putting money in their pockets, kind of like the tax cuts and some of the other stuff that he did. So you have Vince in charge. Trump takes over Monday Night Raw in its 17th year in 2009. And you have him come out one more week after that. And I was alluding to it in the 4th episode, where he is... he institutes the guest hosts of Monday Night Raw. So he said he's not a fan of general managers, right? So instead of naming a new general manager Monday Night Raw, he said each week there would be a different celebrity hosting Monday Night Raw. And that's kind of where he left it off at. So ultimately what ends up happening, Vince buys back on the same night that Trump is live at Raw for the one show that he was kind of in charge of, and he made that edict that Vince ended up keeping in place, right? It's almost like an executive order that doesn't get overturned, right? So we start getting the celebrity guests. It's a whole skit on the art of the deal. Trump does this whole thing where, Vince wants the company back after being paid very handsomely, he said. And Trump doesn't want to give it back unless Vince pays him double for what he paid for it. So ultimately, it's a lesson in the art of the deal. Vince gets Monday Night Raw back from Trump, but it was double what he paid for it. So Trump got the last laugh at the end of the day, but not before Vince McMahon sent him off with a, "Donald Trump, you're fired." So that is the lost episode right there. I hope you guys enjoy it. Episode 6. It's now on Rumble. You should see it towards the top of the channel. But again, it's called Trump or McMahon versus Trump, the lost episode. So you should find it. Sorry about the audio quality. Not the best, but, we were learning back then in 2020. So have fun with that. Don't forget to subscribe to the 4VKM podcast on YouTube, new channel that we're launching. As we conclude these 40 days of 4VKM, we will be launching that podcast on 2/21/2024. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to check out this episode of Trump versus McMahon in the link in the description. Just go to Rumble on YouTube. The links doesn't work. They don't want you to see it, but just head right over to Rumble 4VKM. You will find it there. So stay tuned. Enjoy the show. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite episodes of 4VKM, and we're going full-blown JFK Jr. in this episode. It's called Rodman World Peace, one of the GOAT episodes of all time, and we have a current-day update with this episode as well, so you're not going to want to miss this. As always, enjoy the show. Okay, so I forgot a very important fact. Where was Donald Trump on 10700? January 7th, 2000. Donald Trump was meeting with Jesse the Body Ventura. Enjoy the show.